Hello everyone. Got a few adult jokes for you today. Why does a mother-in-law never wear panties? To have a better grip on her broom. So, after spending the night at a hotel with a girl, a politician takes 3 $100 bills out of his wallet and places them on the dresser. "Thanks," says the girl, "but I only charge $20. $20 for the whole night? The politician says. "There's no way you can make a living on that." "Oh, don't worry," replies the girl. "I do a little blackmail on the side." So a young man was crossing a road one day when a frog called out to him and said, "If you kiss me, I'll turn into a beautiful princess." The man bent over, picked up the frog, and put it in his pocket. The frog spoke up again and said, "If you kiss me and turn me back into a beautiful princess, I will stay with you for 1 week." The young man took the frog out of his pocket, smiled at it, and returned it to the pocket. The frog then cried out, "If you kiss me and turn me back into a princess, I'll stay with you for 1 week and do anything you want." Again, the young man took the frog out, smiled at it, and put it back into his pocket. Next, the frog yelled, Okay, if you kiss me and turn me back into a princess, I'll stay with you forever and do anything you want." Again, the young man took the frog out. Then he chuckled at it and put it back in his pocket. Finally, the frog asked, "What is the matter? I've told you I'm a beautiful princess, that I'll stay with you forever and do anything you want. Why won't you kiss me?" The young man said, "Look, I'm an engineer. I don't have time for a girlfriend, but a talking frog is cool." So a guy joins a monastery and takes a vow of silence. He's allowed to say 2 words every 7 years. After the first 7 years, the elders bring him in and ask for his 2 words. "Cold floors," he says. They nod and send him away. 7 more years pass. They bring him back in and ask for his 2 words. He clears his throat and says, "Bad food." They nod and send him away. 7 more years pass. They bring him in for his 2 words. "I quit," he says. "That's not surprising," the elders say. "You've done nothing but complain since you got here." So I took an elevator up to the 69th floor for a meeting. And as I was getting out, the operator said, "Have a good day, son." I grumbled, "Don't call me son. You're not my dad." He scratched his head. "No, but I brought you up, didn't I?" After my meeting, I got back on the elevator to go back down, and the same operator was there. I didn't say anything to him, but when we got to the ground floor, he said to me, "I'm sorry." "Because you thought you were my dad?" I asked him. He shook his head. "No, son, because I let you down." So, an accountant, a jazz musician, and an engineer were discussing whether it was better to have a wife or a girlfriend. The accountant said, "A wife is the best choice. You have a lifelong partner and a safe, stable environment in which to raise your kids." The jazz musician said, "No, man, I can't be tied down to one woman. I get to know many women, and when I get tired of one, I just go find another. I've got to swing, baby." The engineer said, "It's better to have both a wife and a girlfriend. That way the girlfriend thinks you're with the wife thinks you're with the girlfriend, and you can sneak off to the lab and get some work done." So a doctor, a minister, and an engineer are playing golf. There's a foursome ahead of them that's taking forever on every hole. Finally, they spot the course marshal and ask him what's going on with these guys. The marshal explains that they're firefighters who were injured several years ago when the clubhouse caught fire. They managed to save the building, but all of them lost their sight in the process. The doctor says, "That's terrible. I'm going to call some of my colleagues to see if there's any medical procedure that could help them." The minister says, "I'm going to ask my congregation to pray for them." The engineer says, "Why can't they just play at night?"
So my wife came home early and caught me in bed with a beautiful woman. She screamed, "You filthy pig, how can you do this to me, to the mother of your children? We're getting a divorce!" I said, "Honey, please. Just let me explain." She crossed her arms. "Fine, talk, but these will be your last words." So I told her, "Look, sweetheart, when I got off the bus, I saw this poor lady. She was freezing and starving, and she asked me for help. How could I ignore her? I brought her home and gave her the pizza you didn't eat last night because it was too greasy. She devoured it. She was filthy, so I told her she could take a shower. While she was in the bathroom, I noticed her clothes were dirty and full of holes. So I gave her the lingerie I bought for our anniversary, the ones you hated because they were black. I gave her a pair of your jeans you never wear just because my mom bought them. Then I gave her that shirt you didn't even unpack because it was from a cheap store. Honey, you should have seen how happy she was. She was glowing. I walked her to the door. She turned back, tears in her eyes, and said, 'Is there anything else your wife doesn't use?' And as you can see, here we are, in bed." So a man goes to see the Pope. "Your Holiness, I work for KFC and will offer you $10 million to change the Lord's Prayer from 'Give us this day our daily bread' to 'Give us this day our daily chicken.'" The Pope is aghast. "I can't just go changing God's word for money." The man says, 50 million. Think of all the good the church could do with that money. Your Holiness, the Pope is unimpressed. "I already told you, I just can't do it. I'm sorry." So the guy says, "Okay, final offer, 100 million. Take it or leave it." The next day, the Pope calls all the leaders of the church together and says, "Gentlemen, I have good news and I have bad news. The good news is we've raised $100 million for Catholic charities." The room erupts in cheers. The Pope waits for the room to settle, then says, "And now for the bad news. We lost the Wonder Bread account."
So, an old lady goes to the doctor and says, "Doc, I can't stop farting. They're silent, with no smell, but I've let out 20 in the past 5 minutes sitting here." The doc gives her some pills and tells her to come back next week. The next week, the old lady comes back and says, "Doc, I took the pills. The farts are still silent, but now they stink." The doc says, "Great, we've cleared your sinuses. Now let's work on your hearing."
So a woman was at her hairdresser's getting her hair styled for a trip to Rome with her husband. She mentioned the trip to the hairdresser, who responded, "Rome? Why would anyone want to go there? It's crowded and dirty. You're crazy to go to Rome, so how are you getting there?" "We're taking Continental," was the reply. "We got a great rate." "Continental?" exclaimed the hairdresser. "That's a terrible airline. Their planes are old, their flight attendants are ugly, and they're always late. So where are you staying in Rome?" "We'll be at this exclusive little place over on Rome's Tiber River called Teste." "Don't go any further, I know that place. Everybody thinks it's going to be something special and exclusive, but it's really a dump. We're going to go to see the Vatican and maybe get to see the Pope." "That's rich," laughed the hairdresser. "You and a million other people trying to see him. He'll look the size of an ant. Boy, good luck on this lousy trip of yours. You're going to need it." A month later, the woman again came in for a hairdo. The hairdresser asked her about her trip to Rome. "It was wonderful," explained the woman. "Not only were we on time in one of Continental's brand new planes, but it was overbooked and they bumped us up to first class. The food and wine were wonderful, and I had a handsome 28-year-old steward who waited on me hand and foot. And the Teste Hotel was great. They just finished a $5 million remodeling, and now it's a jewel, the finest hotel in the city. They too were overbooked, so they apologized and gave us their owner's suite at no extra charge." Quote, "Well," muttered the hairdresser, That's all well and good, but I know you didn't get to see the Pope. Actually, we were quite lucky, because as we toured the Vatican, a Swiss guard tapped me on the shoulder and explained that the Pope likes to meet some of the visitors, and if I'd be so kind as to step into his private room and wait, the Pope would personally greet me. Sure enough, 5 minutes later, the Pope walked through the door and shook my hand. I knelt down and he spoke a few words to me. "Oh, really? What'd he say?" Quote, he said, "Who messed up your hair?" So a Chinese doctor moved to the United States full of hope, but after weeks of applications and polite rejections, he still couldn't land a position at any hospital. Undeterred, he scraped together what little money he had, rented a modest storefront on a quiet side street, and opened a small clinic of his own. Above the door, he hung a bold, handwritten sign that proclaimed, "Cure for any disease for $20. If you're not cured, get $100 back." One sunny afternoon, a clever American lawyer strolled past the clinic. He stopped, read the sign twice, and a sly smile spread across his face. "This has to be a scam," he thought. "But if the guy's foolish enough to put it in writing, maybe I can walk out with an easy $100. Feeling confident, he pushed open the door and stepped inside. The lawyer sat down across from the doctor and announced, "Doctor, I've lost my sense of taste. I can't taste a thing." Without missing a beat, the doctor called out, "Nurse, box 22, 3 drops in his mouth." The nurse produced a small bottle and carefully administered the drops. The lawyer's face twisted in disgust. "Ugh, that's kerosene," the doctor beamed. "Perfect. Your sense of taste has returned. That'll be $20. A few days later, the same lawyer returned, determined not to be outsmarted again. He took a seat and declared, "Doctor, I've lost my memory. I can't remember anything. Not even what happened the last time I was here." Once more, the doctor instructed, "Nurse, box 22, 3 drops." The moment the liquid touched his tongue, the lawyer recoiled. "Wait! That's kerosene again." "Wonderful," the doctor replied. "Your memory is fully restored. That'll be another $20. Still refusing to give up, the lawyer came back a third time. This time, he shuffled in with an exaggerated squint, claiming, "Doctor, my eyesight is failing badly. I can barely see a thing." The doctor shook his head with a sympathetic look. "Ah, I'm truly sorry. There is no cure for that. Here is your $100 as promised." He reached into the drawer and handed the lawyer a small stack of bills. The lawyer squinted hard at the money. Then his expression darkened. "Hey, wait a minute. This is only $20. The doctor's face lit up with pure delight. "Fantastic! Your eyesight is completely back. That will be $20, please." So a man with a completely bald head and only one leg is invited to a costume party. He doesn't know what to wear to hide his head and his wooden leg, so he writes to a high-end costume store to explain his problem. A few days later, he receives a parcel with a note, "Dear sir, enclosed, please find a pirate's outfit. The spotted handkerchief will cover your bald head, and with your wooden leg, you will look exactly like a pirate." The man is offended that the outfit emphasizes his disability, so he writes a letter of complaint. A week passes, and he receives another parcel and note. "Dear sir, sorry about the previous parcel. Enclosed, please find a monk's habit. The long robe will cover your wooden leg, and with your bald head, you will really look the part." Now the man is furious, because the company has gone from emphasizing his wooden leg to drawing attention to his bald head. So he writes a really strong letter of complaint. A few days later, he gets a very small parcel from the company with an accompanying letter. "Dear sir, enclosed, please find a bottle of excellent grenadine syrup. We suggest you pour the red grenadine syrup over your bald head, let it harden, and then stick your wooden leg up your ass and go as a candy apple." So a married man goes into the confessional and says to his priest, "I almost had an affair with another woman." The priest says, "Almost? What do you mean, almost?" The man replies, "Well, we kissed and both got undressed and rubbed together, but then I stopped." The priest then says, "Rubbing together is the same thing as putting it in. You're not to see that woman again. For your penance, say 10 Hail Marys and put $100 in the poor box." Then man leaves the confessional, says his prayers, and then walks over to the collection box. He pauses for a moment and then starts to leave. Meanwhile, the priest is watching all this time and quickly runs over to him saying, "Hey, I saw that. You didn't put any money in the poor box." The man replies, "Yeah, but I rubbed the $100 on the box, and according to you, that's the same thing as putting it in." So, after a long courtship, Tom finally marries his longtime girlfriend. One day after the honeymoon, Tom is in the garage cleaning one of his hot rods for an upcoming show. His wife comes out, watches Tom work for a few minutes, and says, "Honey, I've just been thinking, now that we are married, maybe it's time you quit spending all your time out here in the garage, and you probably should just consider selling all your cars." Tom gets this absolutely horrified look on his face, and his wife says, "Darling, what's wrong?" Tom says, "I'm sorry. For a second there, you sounded exactly like my ex-wife." "Ex-wife," she screams. "You never told me you were married before." And Tom says, "I wasn't." So a man hurried into his rabbi's office one afternoon, looking pale and agitated. He sat down across from the rabbi, leaned forward, and spoke in a low, serious tone. "Rabbi, something terrible is happening, and I have to talk to you about it." The rabbi closed the book he'd been reading and gave the man his full attention. "What's wrong?" he asked gently. The man glanced around the room as if someone might be listening, then whispered, "My wife is poisoning me." The rabbi's eyebrows rose in surprise. "How can that be?" he asked carefully. The man wrung his hands and pleaded, "I'm telling you, I'm certain of it. Every meal tastes a little off, and I've been feeling worse by the day. What should I do?" The rabbi considered this for a moment, then nodded slowly. "Tell you what, let me talk to her myself. I'll see what I can find out, and then I'll get back to you." A full week passed. The man spent the days in growing anxiety, barely able to eat or sleep. Finally, the phone rang. It was the rabbi. "Well," the rabbi began, "I met with your wife. We talked for 3 hours." The man gripped the receiver tightly. "Yes," he said, his voice tight with anticipation. "You want my advice?" the rabbi asked. "Yes," the man answered, even more anxiously than before. There was a short pause on the other end of the line. Then the rabbi said calmly, "Take the poison." So Fred had been suffering from terrible headaches for over 20 years. Finally, he went to see a specialist. After a long examination, the doctor said, "Fred, the good news is I can cure your headaches. The bad news is it will require castration. You have a rare condition where your testicles press against your spine, causing severe headaches. Removing them is the only way to relieve the pressure." Fred was stunned and devastated, but after years of pain, he agreed to the surgery. When he left the hospital, he felt strange and incomplete, but for the first time in decades, he had no headache. As he walked down the street, he decided he needed a fresh start. A new life, maybe even a new wardrobe. He passed a men's clothing store and thought, why not? He walked in and told the salesman, "I'd like a new suit." The elderly tailor looked him over and said, "You're a size 44 long." Fred laughed. "That's right. How did you know?" "Been in the business 60 years, the tailor said. Fred tried on the suit. It fit perfectly. "How about a shirt?" the tailor asked. Fred nodded, and the tailor studied him again. 34 sleeve, 16.5 neck. "Amazing," Fred said. "Exactly right." "Been in the business 60 years, the tailor replied. After trying on the perfect shirt, Fred walked around the store feeling better already. Then the tailor asked, "How about some new underwear?" "Sure," Fred said. The tailor looked him over and said, "Size 36. Fred laughed loudly. "Got you there. I've worn size 34 since I was 18. The tailor shook his head and said, "You can't wear size 34. Size 34 would press your testicles right up against the base of your spine and give you one terrible headache." So a rich man is dying and makes a request of his wife. "Honey, I want you to go to the bank and withdraw everything from my checking and saving accounts, all $5 million. Then take the cash, put it in a sack, and put it in the attic." The wife is puzzled and asks, "Why do you want me to do that?" He says, "Honey, I've only got a few months left on this planet. I want the money in the attic so that when my time comes and I pass on, I can take all that money to heaven with me and be happy for all eternity." The wife thinks this is odd, but she does as he asks. A few months later, the man dies. His wife mourns him, and after a few years as a widow, she gets curious. She climbs up into the attic just for kicks to see if the money is still there. She gets up there, and it is. She sighs and says, "I knew I should have put it in the basement." So a Russian, an American, and a British admiral were having a drink on an American aircraft carrier. They were talking about the bravery of their sailors. The Russian said, "I will demonstrate the bravery of our sailors." He calls a sailor over and says, "Jump off the ship, swim under it, and climb back up." The sailor promptly salutes and jumps off the flight deck, swims under the ship, climbs up the davits, and stands in front of the admiral and salutes. The Russian says, "That, gentlemen, is courage." The American says, "That's nothing." He calls over a PO and says, "I want you to jump off the bows, swim under the ship to the stern, and then return." The PO salutes, jumps off the bow, swims to the stern, and climbs back up to stand in front of the admiral and salutes. The American says, "That, gentlemen, is courage." The British admiral says, "That's nothing. Sailor, come here." The Matelot comes to attention and salutes. The admiral says, "I want you to climb the highest mast on the carrier, jump off, swim under the boat from bow to stern, and then from beam to beam, then climb up the mast and do it again." The Matelot looks at the admiral and says, "You can piss right off, sir." The admiral turns to the other two and says, "And that, gentlemen, is courage." So a woman gets down on her knees and says a prayer one night. She says, "Lord, give me a man that will never run from me, never hit me, and that is good in bed." Well, the next morning, the woman hears her doorbell ring. She opens her door to see a man in a wheelchair. He's got no legs and no arms. She asks the man, "What brings you here?" To which the man says, "I'm the answer to your prayer." The woman asks what he means, to which he says, "Well, I've got no legs, so I can't run from you, and I got no arms, so I can't hit you." The woman then asks, "What about the part about being good in bed?" To which the man replies, "How do you think I rang the doorbell?" So a duck walks into a pub and orders a pint of beer and a ham sandwich. The barman looks at him and says, "Hang on, you're a duck." "I see your eyes are working," replies the duck. "And you can talk," exclaims the barman. "I see your ears are working too," says the duck. "Now, if you don't mind, can I have my beer and my sandwich, please?" "Certainly. Sorry about that," says the barman as he pulls the duck's pint. "It's just we don't get many ducks in this pub. What are you doing round this way?" "I'm working on the building site across the road," explains the duck. "I'm a plasterer." The flabbergasted barman cannot believe the duck and wants to learn more, but takes the hint when the duck pulls out a newspaper from his bag and proceeds to read it. So the duck reads his paper, drinks his beer, eats his sandwich, bids the barman good day, and leaves. The same thing happens for 2 weeks. Then, one day the circus comes to town. The ringmaster comes into the pub for a pint, and the barman says to him, "You're with the circus, aren't you?" "Well, I know this duck that could be just brilliant in your circus. He talks, drinks beer, eats sandwiches, reads the newspaper, and everything." "Sounds marvelous," says the ringmaster, handing over his business card. "Get him to give me a call." So the next day, when the duck comes into the pub, the barman says, "Hey, Mr. Duck, I reckon I can line you up with a top job, paying really good money." "I'm always looking for the next job," says the duck. "Where is it?" "At the circus," says the barman. "The circus?" repeats the duck. "That's right," replies the barman. "The circus?" the duck asks again. "With the big tent?" "Yeah," the barman replies. "With all the animals who live in cages and performers who live in caravans?" says the duck. "Of course," the barman replies. "And the tent has canvas sides and a big canvas roof with a hole in the middle?" persists the duck. "That's right," says the barman. The duck shakes his head in amazement and says, "What the heck would they want with a plasterer?" So Timmy is in 2nd grade studying subtraction when the teacher asks, "Timmy, if I have 5 cats and give you 2, how many cats do you have?" 3, Timmy answers. "No, Timmy," the teacher says. "If I have 5 cats and give you 2, I have 3 left. 5 minus 2 is 3. Now, what if I have 5 cats and give you 3? How many cats do you have?" 4. Timmy replies, "No, Timmy, that's not right." "What if I have 5 cats and give you all 5? How many cats do you have?" 6. Timmy says, "That's not correct." The teacher insists. "I only gave you 5 cats." "Yes, it is," Timmy answers. "I already have a damn cat."
So a woman visited her husband in prison. As she was preparing to leave, she turned to a corrections officer and said, "You shouldn't make my husband work so hard. He's exhausted." The officer laughed. Work? Ma'am, he only eats, sleeps, and stays in his cell. The wife looked puzzled. That's strange. He told me he's been digging a tunnel for months.
So Dad is listening to his daughter say her prayers before bedtime. God bless Mommy, and God bless Daddy, and God bless Grandma, and goodbye, Grandpa. He asks her, "Why did you say that?" "I don't know," she answers. "I just felt like saying it." The next day, Grandpa drops dead. Wow, thinks Dad. That's an odd coincidence. A month later at bedtime, the daughter says, "God bless Mommy and Daddy." And goodbye, Grandma. Sure enough, the next day, Grandma breathes her last. Dad realizes this is more than a coincidence, but he isn't sure what to do. He doesn't want to upset his wife by telling her Grandma and Grandpa were her parents. Months go by. Then one night, he is listening to his daughter's prayers again. God bless Mommy. She turns her head and looks straight at him. Dot and goodbye, Daddy. What? Are you sure, honey? She nods. His heart begins racing, and he breaks out in a sweat. He is so upset he can't sleep at all that night. The next day, he goes to work but locks himself in his office. He takes the phone off the hook, cancels all his meetings, and waits for the inevitable. He stays past 5 because he feels safer there. He watches the hours tick by. Finally, it is midnight, and still drenched in sweat, he realizes he has somehow cheated death. He drives home with every nerve frayed. His wife is up and waiting for him. "Where the hell were you today?" "Don't shout," he replies. "I've had an absolutely miserable day." His wife snaps back. "You had a miserable day? I'm the one who had a miserable day." First, the milkman drops dead on the steps.
So a woman gets on a bus, and the bus driver exclaims, "That's the ugliest baby I've ever seen!" Angry as she's ever been, she storms to the back of the bus and sits next to a man who is reading the newspaper. He noticed the woman was visibly upset and asks her what's wrong. She says, "That bus driver just insulted me and my family." So the man says, "Well, that's just terrible. You go up there and give him a piece of your mind. Go ahead, I'll hold your monkey for you."
So a famous lawyer is hit by a bus and dies. When he opens his eyes, he finds himself standing before the pearly gates. Thousands of people are cheering. Streamers float through the air, and a huge banner reads, "Welcome, Frank." A band of angels plays upbeat music. Jesus and St. Peter are waiting and rush forward to shake his hand. Still a little shell-shocked from his sudden death and all the celebration, Frank looks at Peter and asks, "Why am I getting such an amazing reception? Is it always like this?" Peter replies, "No, not at all. You're just the oldest person we've ever welcomed into heaven." Frank blinks. Nobody over 53 has ever entered heaven? St. Peter and Jesus glance at each other, confused. Peter pulls out a scroll and starts skimming it. "Wait a moment," he says. 53? Our records say you're 206. Frank is puzzled. "How do you figure that?" "Well," St. Peter answers, "we couldn't find your date of birth in the records, so we just totaled all your billable hours."
So a gorilla walked into a bar and orders a beer. The bartender is shocked, but pours the beer and puts it on the bar in front of the gorilla, who pulls out a 20 and hands it to the bartender. The bartender heads to the register, but figures the gorilla probably doesn't understand money, so he grabs a single from the till and puts it back in front of the gorilla, who sits quietly sipping his beer. After a bit, the bartender can't stand it and says, "You know, we don't get many gorillas in here." The gorilla replies, "At $19 for a beer, I'm not surprised."
So Joey slipped into the confessional, closed the wooden door behind him, and knelt on the small bench. He cleared his throat and spoke in a low, solemn voice. "Bless me, Father, for I have sinned. I have been with a loose girl." There was a short pause on the other side of the screen. Then the priest's familiar voice asked, "Is that you, little Joey Pagano?" "Yes, Father, it is. And who was the girl you were with?" Joey hesitated, shifting uncomfortably. "I can't tell you, Father. I don't want to ruin her reputation." The priest leaned a little closer to the screen. "Well, Joey, I'm sure to find out her name sooner or later, so you may as well tell me now. Was it Tina Minetti?" Joey kept his eyes fixed on the floor of the confessional. I cannot say. Was it Teresa Mazzarelli? I'll never tell. Was it Nina Capelli? I'm sorry, but I cannot name her. Was it Kathy Piriano? My lips are sealed. Was it Rosa D'Angelo then? Joey's voice grew more urgent. Please, Father, I cannot tell you. The priest let out a long, frustrated sigh. You're very tight-lipped, and I admire that. But you've sinned and have to atone. You cannot be an altar boy now for 4 months. Now go and behave yourself. Joey rose, opened the confessional door, and walked back to his pew with a carefully neutral expression. As soon as he sat down, his friend Franco slid over and whispered, "What'd you get?" Joey allowed himself a small, satisfied smile. 4 months, vacation, and 5 good leads.
So during World War II, a German soldier, a Japanese soldier, and an Italian soldier are all hauled in for an interrogation. The German soldier insists that his superior Aryan genetics will allow him to resist interrogation. The Japanese soldier claims that his loyalty to the emperor will give him the strength to not crack. The Italian soldier says he wishes he had the other two's fortitude because he's sure he'll crumble quickly. During the interrogation, however, the Italian is the only one to withstand the questioning and not spill. The German and Japanese soldiers are impressed and ask how he managed to keep mum, to which the Italian answers, "I wanted to talk, but they tied my hands to the chair."
So a German, an Italian, a Frenchman, and a Brit are debating philosophy. The question arises, what separates man from the animals? Technology, says the German. Other creatures have tools, yet none can match the heights of engineering we have accomplished. It is our industry that separates us from the beasts. I disagree, announces the Italian. It is our food. The creatures of the wild eat, but they do not cook. Humans, on the other hand, create amazing dishes and new combinations that make eating a most enjoyable experience. I say it's art, claims the Frenchman. No other being can create art. From our earliest days we have painted, and now we sculpt, write, and compose as well. The wild animals cannot ever know what it is like to experience deep emotion when viewing a beautiful piece of art. The Brit sits quietly, sipping his tea. After several minutes, the annoyed Frenchman says, "Well, what about you, Liney? What do you think separates man from the animals?" And the Brit says, "The English Channel."